What happens when you're out in the middle of nowhere and you have an emergency? You've completely separated from civilization. Well, you reach for your phone somewhere in your pocket, your purse, whatever, and you plead to the heavens that you're going to have some kind of signal, some bars there, right? And hopefully you do. What happens if you have a localized cellular outage due to a power failure, a network failure, storm issues, or just some catastrophe that happens to your local cellular tower? You hope that you happen to be in an area where you're triangulated by towers. In fact, usually that's something that you can hope for because that's how 5G works. It needs a lot of towers to triangulate. But if you're not anywhere close to either of those situations, well, what happens? What do you do? Well, believe it or not, there's actually a solution coming here in the near future, and it's something that we've actually had around for a while, but it's going to be better than ever. And believe it or not, Elon Musk is involved. Here we go. When news broke that the iPhone 14 would have some new emergency features, I paid very little attention because usually that really doesn't amount to much. They really don't do a lot of innovation anymore with their phones, other than adding, camera quality, which at a certain point diminishing returns. But I'm not the only one who probably mocks Apple from time to time, because even Steve Jobs' daughter dropped an epic meme, troll, about her father's former company on the day the iPhone 14 was announced with its features. Of course, she roasted it, and then she deleted the tweet. Probably a smart thing for somebody who owns so much stock. But she's not wrong. There hasn't been a ton of innovation from Apple or in any of these devices or almost anything they've made in quite some time. Aside from the Apple Studio PC that they came out with last year, everybody's aware they're just not doing what they used to do. And again, maybe there isn't any more room for improvement. But brushing all that aside, Apple did highlight some new emergency features that actually meant something with the release of this phone. One of these features follows in the heels of another company that made the announcement just before they did about emergency services. Apple has added satellite emergency service. Kinda. And we'll get back to that here later in the course of this video. But Apple has actually entered into a partnership with Globalstar to deliver emergency out-of-range services. This agreement allows for the use of about 85% of Globalstar's capacity and has actually been in the works, since 2019, so quite some time. Globalstar, if you're unfamiliar, is a global satellite provider for communications. Now, other satellite carriers that are out there are already working on this shift to satellite availability. And this is another element of what makes up a redundant backbone to serve over 7 billion smartphones that are in the world right now. Believe it or not, 7 billion. That's like a ton. Hawaii actually beat Apple to the announcement. In fact, that's the company that I was mentioning right before Apple, had their Apple event, probably because they knew what was coming. They have their own exclusive satellite comms available, or will have, with their phones. But those phones are not available in the US, so it's kind of, regionalized. But here's where we get into some serious limitations with what these phones can actually do. And then we are going to talk a little bit about the man who's already ready to work around them. Of course, I'm mentioning Elon Musk. And of course, it wouldn't be a Tech Tuesday video without mentioning him, at least not recently anyway. But the emergency services that are being offered are not actually calls. They're pre-programmed response messages via text. Think of them as like a text-based adventure. At least for right now, that's kind of how it's going to be put together. And that data will make it, the round trip to the satellite a little bit more expediently, and allow for, obviously, emergency services to reach wherever you're at. Now, of course, There have already been satellite phones operating around the globe for a very long time. They're just expensive, about the same price of the highest end cell phones right now, but their services for just a few minutes are incredibly expensive, and then you go to a per minutes charge. So it's not like regular phone communication is impossible via satellite. It's just not something that's been readily available to everybody. So, and having used one of these phones on a few occasions, I can say they really have no frills. They're basic phones. They allow you to make a call, but they get the job done, and that's kind of all you need if you're stranded in the middle of, I don't know, Australia or Antarctic or something like that. I'm actually amused that Apple went with Globalstar for their exclusivity deal, and that's kind of the biggest part of that announcement. It's just a very limited product because of what Globalstar can offer. They don't even have a huge system of satellites when it is compared to, obviously, the leader in space comms, Starlink, which is huge. Just over a week ago, and this is really about 9 days ago, Starlink launched another 51 satellites into orbit along with a Sherpa, which is a space tug, to carry into orbit the Varuna project demonstration satellite that Boeing's working on for their V-band testing, because they're getting into the game too. Now let me point out this fact real quickly. Right now, over 3,000 Starlink satellites are orbiting Earth, with about another 9,000 on the way, and these satellites are already capable of handling broadband exchanges from pretty much everywhere on Earth at this point. This capability at the moment is unmatched, so what do you do? Well, if you're any of these other companies, you try to utilize it. Right now, there's a company doing just that. T-Mobile plans on using it sooner rather than later, and they have a partnership with Elon Musk that will allow them to deliver these satellite comms starting sometime in late 2023. T-Mobile customers will actually have access to those satellites that have been floating around there for quite some time and will continue to float around, and with many more on the way, deliver some pretty unique experiences in places where you wouldn't normally get them. So, Musk also recently announced some other things. He let the cat out of the bag with this whole Apple deal, I think, early, and probably not on purpose, because he and Apple have been having discussions to use his Starlink service for a while, I guess, as well. So he also hinted that Apple would have to actually adapt their devices to have proper calling on his Starlink broadband satellites, which makes a lot of sense, just to make it a little more convenient and less reliant on Starlink actually emulating a cellular tech. To me, the service would be nothing more than like a VoIP, so I don't see why they couldn't just add an app that would do this. But hey, it's still going to beat whatever Globalstar is offering anybody. And in any kind of an emergency, you just need somebody to help. So whatever you can get is probably a welcomed exchange. A greater expansion of the broadband services that Starlink is already underway, believe it or not. Right now, Starlink is set to deliver broadband services at sea for Royal Caribbean cruises, which is pretty cool. That will obviously improve the service you get on a cruise ship. You won't have interruptions, and it'll be much more familiar type of Wi-Fi like you would have on land. And of course, they also intend to serve the skies with Hawaiian Airlines and massively improving their Wi-Fi communications from their planes. If Musk has his way, and I think he probably will, another 30,000 satellites will join the initial 12,000 that he already has regulatory approval for. This will obviously expand speeds, coverage, etc., etc. And it gives you the real possibility that you could actually have higher quality communication throughout space as well. And I mean that because it could be really important. It's possible that all space-based comms would actually clean up some terrestrial clutter also, but you could really have a conversation with somebody in space on the moon or on Mars. And there's always going to be delays, but at least it's better than what we have now. But hey, what do you think? Do you think Starlink and the interactivity with cell phones will dramatically change the way we communicate? Do you think that the possibility of, sat phones for everyone will make real-time communication from anywhere and internet from anywhere more inexpensive, I think would be the right way to go about it. It's going to be quite prevalent regardless. But do you have any difficulty with the fact that we're going to essentially be surrounded by 100,000 satellites here in the next, decade? I don't know. It's going to be a lot more up there, a lot more space junk. And of course, my concern is how often that space junk falls back to Earth. Or will we have reliable little space tugs that'll grab all those satellites? There's a lot of questions here, but I'm curious what your thoughts are. So please give me your comments down below, answer any of the questions I posed, or just give me your thoughts on the whole matter. I think it's pretty interesting. The one unique thing to come out of the latest Apple announcement, or interesting thing, I should say, not necessarily unique, but it gives us a chance to talk about some other cool stuff, and of course bring Elon Musk into the conversation on another Tech Tuesday. And with that, support other independent creators out there bringing you all kinds of news stories that maybe you didn't hear about, and we have an awful lot of those on the regular, and I really do feel like we miss out quite often on news because we just are not made aware of it, because the news media is focused on only one thing right now, unlike the independent creators who are looking at things in a much wider scope, less myopic. Anyway, support them by commenting, hitting the like button, sharing out their content, and of course the subscription thing. And with that, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, wash your hands, of course, because it's good hygiene. And until next time,